Welcome to Built to Last, the podcast where entrepreneurs share real stories about the triumphs and challenges of building enduring success. Hosted by Colby Jardine and Levi Lawrence, this show is as much about learning as it is about sharing. Every day is a learning curve, and Colby and Levi invite you to join them as they uncover the habits, mindsets, and strategies that help organizations and individuals thrive.
All right. I'm really excited with this conversation. I think we've solidified the name of the podcast, and hopefully the intro has clarified that, but we're still early enough that it's been a discussion. What we're trying to do is talk about business and beyond, the things that interest us and we're super curious about, both on building better businesses and doing work better, but also how we live better, because we all have kind of interesting and different ways of looking at life, I find, the people who are all owning businesses or leading. So today, I'm going to let him intro himself. This is your small foreshadowing there, Constantino. I'm not going to do it for you. But Constantino's coming from, and what excites me about this conversation is we've done work with Constantino and his company. We were introduced through, a mutual connection and friend. But we come from different countries, have different cultural backgrounds. And so some of the exploring I hope to do is around not only some operational stuff, because I'm interested in that, but like some of the cultural pieces of being a business owner in different cultures. And so I'm super excited. And so before I go too much further, I was just wondering if you want to introduce a little bit about who you are and what your company is, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Thanks, Levi. So I'm Constantino Papadopulos, Mexican, born and raised. Um, I founded a business. We have two businesses. One is called Quick which is a Mexican company that does IT development mostly, nearshoring. We do CRM, ERP a little bit, and we have a team down in Mexico that we manage and operate daily. And we have the US portion of it, a company called Enterprix, which is IT consulting mostly. We leverage the fact that we have both companies. We try to have the best of both worlds, meaning a global market with top level solutions and having the advantage of nearshoring, cost advantage, structural and elements. And I've been doing this for 8 years now. This is my life. It's been quite a journey. Excited for what's coming up in the future, but glad to be here. Great to talk to you and excited for this.
I didn't realize that we were the same age, the company age. We're going on 8 years. That's funny. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, different journeys, I'm sure.
For sure.
I'd love to just, while we're still on the topic of you, why did it get started? Was it just you saw an opportunity, or you were a client of one, or you just wanted to create your own job? What started it?
So my journey in business was kind of a mix of chance and necessity, pretty much. I started working, I graduated 2009, the middle of the financial crisis. I went to college in the States. My goal was to work in finance in a big bank for years, a couple of years, get some experience, and then see where life took me. But during that period, there was not much to do. I come from a family or a culture that's very family focused, and very business focused as well. My grandfather migrated from Greece over to Mexico, started a very successful entrepreneurial career over 40 years, locally and in the region. And my dad, was one of the four brothers that kind of took over the business. He always wanted me and my brothers and sisters to get education in the States. I always liked the idea, so that was what I did. But unfortunately, I had to come back to Mexico. Not a lot of opportunities in the States, and I ended up starting a business in a completely different realm. I did industrial machinery, forklifts, rental, sales, out of an opportunity that came across from a friend or a friend of my father's actually, and I devoted a good 6 7 years of my life to that. I I enjoyed it. I didn't realize how misaligned that was with my interest and my skill set until I ended up doing what I'm doing now. So to answer your question, um, I I hired a couple of companies to develop an application, a software to manage all the operation for the forklift business, work orders, kind of a CRM sales process that went over to inventory, pretty much an ERP. And after a couple of failed attempts, I talked to my
There's got to be a
brother-in-law.
better way.
Yeah, that was the idea. I talked to my brother-in-law. He was not married to my sister at the time, and he has an IT or he has an IT background. And we talked. I said I'm looking for something. He pointed me in the direction of Soho. I didn't know anything. My I've always liked IT and computers, but I had no coding or software engineering background at all. I took a couple of courses, and over a year, I built a full-on application where I ran my business. And at that point, I realized how much I liked both the process and the defining the structure and the processes and the problem solving of things. And I learned coding to a good degree. I'm not an expert, but I'm dangerous enough to know what I'm doing. And I was very happy with it. I started talking to friends about it. I got a friend of mine who has a pest control business. He was doing everything on paper, and I showed him what I did. He loved it. I built the solution, the application for him. And at that point, that was one of the aha moments where I said, "All right, you know what? I think I like doing this. I see the value in this." Um, at that point, I decided to talk to my brother-in-law and say, "All right, I think there's a business opportunity here. I don't know where, I don't know how, but I see potential. Let's start exploring it and see where this takes us." So that's how I ended up in this business. We worked. He had a full-time job. I was running my business at that time. We started getting some friends and family to get involved. We built probably 10 or 15 different solutions. He was doing more of the coding part of things. I was doing the process analysis and bringing down the business side of things to solutions in the software. We were working late nights, weekends, to a point where it got to making a decision. I was clear that I wanted to follow that path, and I talked to him. I said, "I want to do this full time. Do you want to try this? Test it for a year, see where this takes us?" That was 2017, and we partnered up and started the business. That's how I got into this world.
Hmm. And you must have exited your other one?
I sold my business a year after.
Mhm.
I just left it aside. I went there probably on Saturdays and a couple of hours late afternoons, but I left it, and this became my full um,
Hmm.
uh, focus for a good year and a half till
How,
we kind of developed it.
how did you kind of separate your brain space, or how did you make that transition?
I think it was a process. From the moment that I started building the application for my business, it gradually took a lot more attention to that side more than the operation of the other business. Then when we started doing applications or software for other either friends or family or some of our initial clients, I saw that it was demanding more and more time. At the time, it was only two of us, so our time availability was limited, and that kind of took me to a place where we had to decide. I couldn't handle both, and I had a preference for this. Um, how I managed it with late nights and probably missing a lot of details. which was not ideal, but
Poor
it was
lifestyle
what it
habits, probably,
definitely. But yeah, that's the way it went. And I mean, looking back at it, there were some pretty um, dark moments where there was a lot of uncertainty and some big decisions to be made. But I'm glad it was the path that I took.
Interesting. I have all kinds of things I want to
Yeah,
ask.
me too.
I guess so. One of the questions I wanted to ask is when and how and why moving to the U.S. But I guess the way I wanted to frame is that did you need to, or was that like did you run towards it, or were you running away from your current market? Like, what was the decision? Like, what brought you over?
So it was a good coincidence of two facts, right? One, naturally, we started with the local market and the Mexican market, and we had some very good projects, but the culture in terms of business and in terms of IT was not ideal, and we were suffering from it. And I'll give you a couple of examples. For instance, um, the awareness from businesses, especially small and medium businesses, of investment in IT and the benefits that it produces in efficiency and profitability, they're not valued or were not valued at that point to a place where they were willing to invest, right? So to summarize it, um, there's some pre-built software that you can get for a couple $100 a year. You own it, and that's the operating system that you use. There's not much advantage in using it, but it takes care of the basics, and businesses used to focus mostly on selling or operating. They didn't see a lot of value there. And then another point was that the software as a service market was starting to develop in the States, and it was something that culturally it was not something that was accepted or a good fit for the Mexican market. So we had to kind of push for it a lot instead of having clients see the value. We were kind of convincing, and it took a lot of time. So at the same time, we went to an expo, an event that Soho makes every year called Soholics, and that was a big eye opener for us. We saw a huge market. We saw a very good product for a niche of the market, and we met people there that didn't have a good partner or a good company to build and help them develop the system where they needed to do it. And at that moment, we said, "All right, let's try our first international client." Our first international client was from Australia. Um, so a big time difference. We worked with them for about, I don't know, 6, 8 months. Same late nights, weekends. Um, but that was the big change, like that opened our eyes to the big market and the value that the US and I think most of the global market now sees, but it was not the case at that moment. And from that moment on, we decided to focus solely on the US market. We've had clients from Canada, from the Middle East, from Europe, from Australia, like I said. And Mexico, we do a little bit of work, but we try to go where the market finds the most value on what we do. We don't want to push a lot if the client doesn't see the value in it.
Sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing, so like for transparency, and I think you know this, is that we've been making efforts and thoughts for quite a while to go into the U.S. market ourselves. The missing piece, though, is that we are not aligning ourselves with something like Zoho. Would you like? Is that where most of your early international sales came from? Was through that alignment, the recognizable brand information?
Yep. Yeah. I think, I mean, it's very difficult, and we tried it a couple of times, but finding a good fit in terms of a client and the company without having an element to match, it's difficult. I mean, you can do it through networking, you can do it through word of mouth, but getting it to scale is not as easy if there's not some kind of common ground, well, to start with. So
Write that down, Colby.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Um, huh. So okay, keep going. Tell us more.
I mean, in terms of the timing, I'm talking about 2019. So we started getting our first US clients,
Oh, we
bigger
were so
projects.
young and naive in
Yeah.
2019.
No, but by that time we had a team of probably 10 people working already. We had an office set in place. We had uh, a business to operate. What started with us two had developed into a business. And then COVID happened. And that was a big shift in everything. But I think it was more of an opportunity, and I'm not going to say a blessing, but there was a lot of need and value seen on what we did.
Yeah.
So I have I don't know if I've told you this story before, but we were working with a company in New York developing their ERP for operations. And it was probably November 2019, around that time, where the news about COVID in Asia and the first cases in the States. And the owner calls me and says, you know what? I don't know when, but in a very short term, I'm sure they're going to close us down because of COVID. I need to get a phone system in place so we can operate remotely. And it was probably a month project where we moved everything. They had like physical locations with their salespeople. We transferred everything to a VoIP telephony system. And a month after, New York was closed for a couple of months. So, and at that same time, a lot of people had to go and work remotely. Systems, um, even I mean, like Zoom or a video conference was not as widespread and as accepted and like they were during that time. We had experience because we had been working a couple of years with everything remotely. So during that year and a half of COVID, we grew from 10 up to probably 35 people in the team. And it was a challenge, definitely. Hiring was a challenge, training was a challenge, operating was a challenge, but a good challenge. I think we made the best out of it. And I think even though it was some crazy times, something to like a good memory to reflect back on.
Hmm. Yeah, we always, I don't know where you heard this, Levi, or if you just made it up, or I don't know where I might have heard it, but high quality problems.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
There's still problems, but they're just like they're better than ones you could
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. That's fascinating. I'm, wow, my mind is going in a lot of different directions. It's funny how aligned we are in a lot of ways with kind of changing our market. Like we started off as kind of like a niche kind of marketing firm, and then we felt like we were all like there was a marketing company opened in Atlanta, Canada every 6 seconds was a stat that I made up. It was just like everyone was doing it. It was very confusing for the clients. We needed to, you know, be different. So like, how could we, instantly provide more value and be excited about the work and kind of differentiate
And
ourselves?
not compete with 20-year-olds with a cell phone or 15-year-olds with a cell phone, right?
Yeah, because I mean, like you said, like I think Atlanta, Canada, there's a lot of opportunity for growth here, and so we do find ourselves kind of, um, I guess, how could I put it? Like we're almost like educating on what's possible, and like the timing has to be right for the client to make these decisions and like process improvement and technology and all that sort of thing. So that did drive our decision of like, okay, well we can grow this at a bit of a slower pace locally, but like let's go pour rocket fuel on the U.S. market and see what we can do. Yeah, it's interesting that. Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Very
My
cool.
question, and there's no answer, but it's like, what is like it's been important to me. Maybe I'm making stuff. Maybe it's my ego, but the uh, one of the things we promise our clients is we don't go in with a technology preference. Is we start with them and where they are and only apply technology after. And so we've been hesitant because of that narrative, and it has been like we like that methodology, but it's hard because we don't align ourselves openly with known solutions that have predetermined lead generation, all that fun stuff. So we're like word of mouth and marketing our story, and but what
Yeah,
is that Zoho solution if we don't want to be tied or perceived as tied? We don't have to be tied, but the perception is there.
yeah, and it makes it like our sales cycle's very, very long for these types of projects, and
Of course.
yeah, and like I think that that might even make it longer. The
Definitely.
agnostic bit, you know.
Yeah, for
Definitely.
sure.
And I think it's important to recognize where the solutions you can bring to the table are valuable or not very early in the process. I think
Mm,
it was a learning experience for us. At some point, very early on, we were trying to push um, solutions that were not ideal, and it was a very important lesson for us to learn, both for ourselves and our clients, and something that provides value right up front. And we've never hesitated in pointing potential clients on other directions. We do it either locally or internationally with our network. And I mean, I think there's a big enough market for everything and everyone as long as you do a good job. And it's just a matter of recognizing where your big value add is.
Hmm.
yeah.
And have you noticed um, like have you found kind of your niche in like you know, there's manufacturing, there's professional services, there's like have you kind of figured that out for yourselves, or how did you approach that?
It's a tough question because I think our competitive advantage, if I can summarize it in two or three elements. One is the fact that we have our own internal team that works locally in our office. We don't subcontract. We don't have remote workers. Everyone that's part of our team, we hire, we train, and we all work in the two offices that we have. So it's being that one of our advantages, our our value is very focused on what we know. So we kind of have an issue where we get better and better at what we do, but it's hard to bring in new either platforms or new um, uh, elements to the
Mm,
product or services that we can provide. So that's one. And in terms of niche, this is difficult because given that we do have um, developers and we work with platforms that are flexible enough to adjust to different business types, I've never been able to answer that question industry wise, right? So we've done projects from healthcare to financial services to retail to pretty much everything and anything. So I think our niche is where three elements come together. One is a client that recognizes the value in investing in software and solutions that aligns with the platforms that we work with, whether it's Soho that I mentioned or some of the others that we work, and a client that needs some customization, integration, um, component of the platform where it brings more value than either a vertical that already exists or an out of the box solution like any ERP in the market. So it's when those three elements combine together where we bring the best value, starting from understanding the business, coming out with solutions and recommendations, and then transferring all that into the system and the implementation.
I I want to come back to like some of the more like story driven, but I do have one little debate I've been having, and it's a
Yeah.
business technology debate that we can land on both sides of. It's actually a funner, and that is a word, discussion if we are on opposite sides. But I came from very small businesses, and we've grown in complexity and sophistication, but I still have this strong bias where most businesses, my own personal opinion, most businesses should not be building because they're not going to be able to keep up with the change. They should be buying off a shelf and have something that's managed externally and learn how to use it. and we can tailor it and customize it. But then I have a lot of people I talk to is like, well, you need your intellectual property. You want to build it. That's where the value long term is. And I'm like, I have that debate often, and I just I have had something built and put it in the app store. I've gone through some of the frustrations, and then things stop working, and I have continuous problems. And I just like the build versus buy. You kind of do both. So is there like a leaning towards one or the other?
I definitely agree with you with the fact that most businesses should just buy. And probably 80% or 75% of businesses should just buy. The added value of developing or integrating um, to the ROI that they get from it is not worth it. And we recognize that we're not looking to service that 75-80% of the market.
Mm.
It's that other market that they either have a very clear competitive advantage, whether that's on the sales side, on the operations, or in some part of their process that needs to be translated from a paper or from the head of the founder or whoever it is onto the system that becomes their operating platform as they scale. That's the niche market where I think where we work the best.
Hmm.
And I think it's important to recognize it. A lot of the businesses out there that do the same things that we do try to push solutions that are um, more in terms of implementation of the system that's out of the box, which is great. That's for the 80% of the market, but that's not where we've tried to focus on.
And it probably matters about like like how intentional is the owner of this business being when they go to choose these things. There's like I like the idea of owning my own thing, but what does that actually mean?
Mhm.
And what's the plan long term around owning your own thing? Because I think a lot of people are just like, no, 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 I think I like this idea, and they're
Once
stuck.
it's built, it'll be fine. I don't have to continuously
Yeah,
invest in it.
and yeah, I think that's probably where a lot of people might land, where there's a bit of you know attachment to ideas with no real long term plan around it. Yeah. Hmm.
Agree.
Uh, I wouldn't mind taking this somewhere. It's business, but also personal, which is very fitting. And I told you I was going to ask this, and I didn't get the story earlier on purpose. But you've made a couple interesting moves that I've seen just from the outside. And the first one I just wanted to ask about, I'd love to hear how you navigated because it sounds like you did it really well, and I've seen it done it very poorly. Is you split up as a business partnership, and there was a family relation, and you just mentioned that family is really important in Mexico, and I was on the receiving end of that communication where you said we have a quick word for you, and we were doing we refer you to as our technical partner. You're part of our extended team on specific projects, and it's like we need to talk to you, and I was like, what is going on? Anyway, it was a very interesting delivery, and I'm sure you did it for all your other clients, and the ripples haven't been really noticeable. But I'd love to hear a little bit about how that decision was made and how you manage it so effectively, because it's a thing a lot of people do poorly.
Yeah, and I think we were very intentional from the moment we decided to partner up. Um, it was all with the best intentions and with the best interest of each other in mind. I mean, we definitely when we told our family that we were starting a business together, we had pushback from everyone. But it was an opportunity that we both wanted to take, and it was a great ride for both of us. And I'm sure my brother-in-law Antonio would agree on it. I think throughout the growth of the business, we were both very valuable in different areas, but it got to a point where both personal preference, risk tolerance, and pretty much life goals, I would say, were misaligned. So I'm probably 6, 7 years older than him. My position in life is different. My personal uh, goals and dreams are different, and that started to create. I'm not gonna say a gap, but a difference in the vision and the route that we wanted to take the company to. and we tried 2 or 3 different times to either separate the responsibilities, leave one of us making all the decisions, or the other. We tried both actually, but as time went by, it was just clear to me that it was not sustainable and it was not the best for the business in the long term. It got to a point where instead of bringing the issues or the discussions to the table and having a healthy conversation and discussion, we were just putting them off, and it was the business that was suffering. So I kind of had a good amount of time to think about this and process it. I had to leave town for a couple of months, and it was during that time that it was clear to me that it was important for the business to have one head and one vision, whether it was his or mine. And we talked about this internally. It's not that mine or his was better. It was just trying to take the business to a different place, and both were valid. So with that good intentions and the best interest that we started, I sat down with Antonio and told him, you know what, I think this the business is suffering, and it's in our best interest to fix it in a friendly way and the best way possible. It took us about 2 or 3 months looking at different scenarios. I think that, like you said, the fact of family being very important or very valuable was definitely of help during that process. So we got my brother, for instance, involved. We had his father involved, not in terms of the negotiation, but kind of explaining the personal side and the issues that we saw, and having that open conversation kind of defined it to a point where it's either you or me that keeps the business going. And in the end, it was me, an agreement of both. It was hard. It was definitely a hard decision. We just had our Christmas party last week, and it's tough for me not to see him, because there's a lot of his input and his values still, and I will never stop recognizing his input. But I think for the best interest of the business, it was a decision that had to be made with its hard moments. But in the end, I think he's doing well, I'm doing well, and it was the best interest for us.
I'm a chunk older than you, I believe, but you are much more mature.
That was beautifully said.
Yeah. Double click and underline. I don't know how to do that in a podcast yet, but I have seen that done so poorly. And your line around, not line, what you said around the important discussions or big topics were being put off. Like we it's open. We have 3 managing partners at Iron House, and we've had conflict, as I'm sure all partners do. And we got good advice, so we went through, we now have one of the pro steps is, and mostly I ask Colby, is like, what are you not saying today? If we just institutionalize some of these things to make sure, because we know that it happens when things get busy or hard, that things just go unsaid. Double down in our world that we're 100% virtual, so we don't have a chance to run into people, so it's easier to avoid.
Yeah, and stuff like, you talk about stuff building up over time, like that can happen even faster in a virtual world, and you start to tell yourself stories, and everyone's telling themselves stories, and those stories are not true most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but yeah, very real in your own head when you're in the dark like I am right now. Yeah, that's
And then to,
fascinating. And you said something that um, you recognize his efforts and the things that have lasted in the business. Like, that is such a great thing to say.
Hopefully you mean it too.
Well, I
I
mean,
do, I really do.
yeah. I mean, I've never heard somebody say that before. You see, like, all these tech companies that have started off with partners, and they'll never ever recognize the things that the other people have done, and they'll figure out some, way to dismiss it if someone ever asks them about it. But like, can you tell me a little bit more detail about those things that you feel still?
Sure. I mean, for instance, um, we had different styles in terms of operating. I'm more of a risk taker. I'm not afraid to go after big projects or bigger claims. Antonio was a lot more down to earth, risk averse. So, for instance, a lot of the management
Some
process,
people call
meaning
that responsible and concerned.
right, right. I I've tried for almost 4 years. I still can't figure that part out, but I'll keep trying. Um, for instance, all the management process, the way we manage our cash flow, our budgets, all that part is something that I learned from him, or I I didn't apply it well in my past experiences and caused some big headaches at the moment. So that's a very clear element that I recognize and I value, and I thank him still to this day. A lot of the technical team, the processes, it was something that was completely new to me, and I think there's a big element of Antonio's work and his vision on how things work. Um, I mean, even the people, given that we're all, like I said, working in the same space, um, we people still ask about him. I was in the Christmas party. He and my sister, they had a baby last year. Everyone was asking about them. So it, I cannot say this is my business. It's both our good and our bad, our good decisions and our bad decisions led us to this place. And I won't stop saying that there's a big um, portion of his mind and his way of doing things in the business. And of course, everything that I recognize that's good, I'll keep adding and yeah, trying to grow.
Yeah, and partnerships are such an interesting thing of like, you know, it's necessary to have the push and pull constantly, but then how do you do that over long term in a healthy way with saying the things that need to be said, and the personal side, the business side, the whatever, like it's a marriage, and you're trying to grow, and there's just a lot of complexity to it, and I find that we've found a pretty good stride as of late, and yeah, but it is interesting, and like I've had other partnerships where it's gone like really, really poorly, um, and family was involved in that too, and that made it much more difficult. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
My first business partner was my wife, and I'm still married, so I'm going to take that as a big win. Which
yeah,
the big silver lining, because I went through a business failure, like full on, and it's like, well, that survived, so that's got to be pretty telling.
yeah. Same actually. Like I had I guess it was a partnership that just wasn't papered for me, and it was a lot of effort and a lot of risk, and brought family into it, and then you know. My fiance Kana was with me at the time, pretty fresh relationship, first few years, and then that happened. Had to move back to my parents' place. Like it all went like really badly, and so we're on the other side of that. And uh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. It's good. I got to choose my words carefully when I talk about. Hey, we're thinking about doing this.
Oh yeah,
But
that's a
it's
whole other podcast on.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but I think those are the support systems that we need in place. And I also think that I did have a couple of bad experiences with partnership in the past. Um, I I used to work with my father for a couple of years. I ended up um, just leaving in a friendly way, as friendly as possible, but there was family there involved as well. So it was the things that I didn't do well in the past experiences that led me to, I think, manage this last one very, very well.
yes, yeah, and to have like to look back on, when you're younger and you're first getting into business, and like you kind of have your natural talents, but you haven't developed any skills to take that to the next level. And there's maybe some ego in the way where you just don't understand life, and yeah, that totally happened to me too. Yeah,
Certain amount of road rash and life experience to get performance for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about the second topic. There was two. Because outside, I think you did really well. The first one was
Mhm.
validated. The
Mhm.
second one is you, from my understanding, we haven't talked about this. I've heard
Mhm.
it from other members of your team that uh, Constantino's no longer CEO, and he's delegated that role, and he's refocusing his efforts. Probably not as well communicated as the other one, because I was like, there was a good 48 hours where I thought you were dying, and that's
I
why.
was.
So, uh, and it was just like, oh my god, what's going on? Because we did have projects together, but I that change I have seen more people screw that up. If that like trying to get out too soon and delegating, can they? So I'd love to hear the real story around you giving away the and it's relatively recent. This isn't long time.
Yeah, and
That's a big move.
you're looking healthy
Mm.
now. So yeah, spill the beans. Let's go.
All right. So, I mean, one of the big differences that I had with my partner was where I wanted to take the business in terms of me operating it, right? I I recognize that I'm good at a few things, but there's a lot of more talented people at a lot of things, and I really mean that.
There's
It
that
was
maturity again.
God.
it's time tested. I mean, I've tried everything, and there's evidence to all of this.
Yeah.
But it was something that a big difference in terms of the vision of where we wanted to take the business. My dream is to um, put together a team of people that are committed and very capable of doing everything that I can do as good as they can, and that's the route I'm taking the business on. So probably not as well planned, or the timing was not ideal. Again, there were a couple of elements working at the same time. First, I was out of the office probably 4 or 5 weeks with a health issue. My work-life balance was not good at all. So I had to stop. The body just pretty much demanded for me to stop. And that caused me to had to leave operations of the business kind of to a side a little bit, delegate a lot of what I was doing. Then at the same time, um, going back to partnerships, my dad, who I used to work with a while back, came to me with one of my brothers with a business opportunity that demanded a good deal of my attention over the last couple of months. Travel,
Hmm.
negotiations,
The
pretty
business
much
affair.
everything, a business affair. So with both things happening at the same time, I just kind of decided to start moving that process earlier than I was planning on, recognizing that there'd be some growing pains along the lines. But I'm pretty happy with where we're at. There's a lot of areas of improvement I recognize, but I think it's something that if I don't start now, or if I didn't start it at that moment, I would have just pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. I enjoy being part of the operation. Probably not the best place where I can add value to our clients or to our business, but it's great to solve and be in meetings and learn new businesses or new processes and bring out solutions. I do love it, but I think I'm ready to try and um, jump on that new decision or new
Hmm.
scheme where I leave operations or some of the operations to the team and see where that takes us.
Have
Interesting.
you already found yourself dabbling into areas that probably shouldn't have you in there?
No, not recently because my time has been very limited.
Uh,
So I was in Europe for probably 15-20 days last month. Time difference. So I haven't had the chance right now. I have a bit more time. I think I'm very clear on where I can add value, where I can provide support to the team that's taking over, and I'm very excited to see where this takes us because over the last 8 years, it's been either me or Antonio or whatever we come up with. But now I'm ready to open that table and the decisions and the projects to the rest of the team.
Very cool.
Interesting.
And how did sweet Rodrigo take this?
I think um,
The
he took
timing
it
was a
very
little
well.
interesting for him as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, he's
true,
like,
true.
I have this new thing I brought into the world. It's like-
Yeah, that was probably not ideal in terms of timing again. I think I've said that phrase 15 times already, but um, I think, I mean, Rodrigo is part of our team, and we met through Antonio actually, and I've always seen his talent and his value as a
Mhm.
great asset for the company, and I think I mean, at least I knew what he can bring to the table probably a year and a half back, but we were still in that process of having two minds fighting over where to take the
Mhm.
business. So it was a conversation that we had probably a year ago.
Mhm.
Um, there were some complications along the way, some people that left the company. We had to replace and train, but it was something that we planned on
Mhm.
probably a year ago, and I told you we had our Christmas party last week, and it was great for me to see that the team is now Rodrigo's team, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's still me, but there were some new faces that I hadn't met before. But the entire structure is I'm not gonna say loyal, but it's built and it's designed and it's aligned with his vision, and I'm ready to do everything and anything I can to make it work. Obviously for the company, for him, and for the rest of the people involved in it.
So selfishly, and I love that this podcast just gives us a selfish platform to ask questions that we're curious about. Are you allowed to tell us about the affair? What's exciting, or is it too early?
No, I mean um, it's a company that sells technology to certain areas of the government.
Mhm.
We had our first deal with the army forces in Mexico. It's technology pieces around equipment.
Hmm.
It's nothing to do with I don't even know how you call them, like
Are you
firearms or anything
are you an
along those
arms
lines.
dealer?
No.
That'll be the new the title of the podcast, I think.
Are you an arms dealer? Question mark.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I think I'm not in the right country or the right time in my life to get involved with that. So no, but it was an opportunity that came across with my brother and my father. They asked me to get involved. I don't know. I think, like I said, the timing was not perfect, but looking back, I'm glad it happened the way it did.
Mhm.
We're gonna have to fix a lot of things along the way, but like I said before, if it didn't happen at that time, we probably still have that project on the drawer, planning on it. I don't think there's ever a perfect time for changes like that.
Mm. Yeah. I love I jokingly say the business affair. I heard that from somebody, and I'm sure I'm stealing it, but it's just so. It's funny, but it's really can be a distraction, especially if you're not going into it eyes wide open. Um, One of the reasons why we sought out and we merged companies and wanted, like, I wanted a partnership. I didn't want to do alone, and I think we were the same as all three of us. All have other things. It's like we need to keep that monkey brain happy. So one thing is never probably going to be enough. And so by
Mhm.
having three managing partners who own this company, which is, we have written words on paper describing our commitment of capacity and competency to this thing, but like Colby owns a small company with an e-commerce front in his niche, and I do speaking and facilitation and coaching, and Aaron, our other partner, has done a bunch of different side things, and we just need that a little bit. It's like an open relationship.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like it's something that I've always needed and wanted. Like I didn't know that entrepreneurship was an option when I was younger. Like through high school and just my perception of the world, that never got opened up to me. And like the whole kind of monkey brain ADD type thing where we're always chasing things. It's like that goes back to that push and pull partnership thing. It's good, and it's good to be surrounded. Like Levi and I are both a part of peer groups, like business peer groups, and like having that sounding board too is just like
An accountability board.
yeah, yeah, it's great. I mean that we're so lucky to have you always kind of are you like you seem like a very optimistic kind of type of person. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between you and I, and I'm still thinking I got to make a trip down. That'd be a shame. But have you always when did you feel like entrepreneurship was like, oh, this is my thing?
So funny story. By way of chance, I ended up going to college in the number one ranked entrepreneurship business school in the US. By
But
chance,
you went for finance.
I went for finance, but I ended up majoring in finance and entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship was a concept that was completely foreign to me until I got to college, and it was like a very proud uh, badge that the college had. So I think throughout my college years, I bought or I liked the idea to a point where I said I wanted to pursue that. Probably not after I graduated. I wanted to have some experience, but at some point, it was definitely something that I was trying to achieve. And but like I said, right after I graduated, it was the only choice. Part of a study that we did in my on my honors thesis when I graduated was analyzing the entrepreneurial activity across the world based on different factors. But one of the factors that was in play was opening a new venture out of opportunity or necessity. So um, we did a whole study on it, but in the end, I ended up being an entrepreneur out of necessity. There was nothing else on my plate, and I think it was at that point that I recognized that was the route I wanted to follow, and I feel that being optimistic is a primary trait for entrepreneurs. If we start thinking about what can go wrong, the risks, the
Nothing would
hard
ever
times
get
that nothing would ever get done. So at first I was very naive or very idealistic in terms of how things work in the world, and it was through my first probably 10 years in business that got me to a place where I have to be optimistic, knowing that there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of headaches along the road, but there's definitely some very sweet moments along the way, and we have to enjoy them as we get them, because it's not an end goal. There's always something else. There's always some urgency or some issue to fix, and we have to enjoy those moments, whether that's in business, personal, whatever it is. That's become a kind of like a mantra or a central idea around my life.
Interesting. Yeah,
I was thinking like you mentioned you had a bit of a health scare. Like entrepreneurship and health has kind of become a very popular topic. It's there's so many guys preaching the 4 a.m. cold plunge sauna breathing routine. I find it a little bit nauseating, to be totally honest. Like how do you manage that? Like we all kind of have our thing that can shut our brains off and make us, you know, disassociate for a little while. But like, how have you managed your kind of health and
Very
business
badly.
life? Yeah. Yeah,
Very badly.
but that being said, like I've been in that previous business that I was in, it was like the worst health I had ever been in because I was traveling so much all over the country, and not surrounded by people that cared about it. So like I had always cared about my health growing up, and then it just
Yeah.
easily got pushed aside. But now,
Mhm.
like, now that I've got like good partners and like I can manage the time a little bit better, I can take it more seriously. But how are you doing that, and how has it shifted since the bit of a health scare?
So I've always wanted to have, or I've always recognized the value in terms of having a reasonable or a healthy work life balance. The thing is, I'm the type of person that always tends to please others and leave myself behind. And there are a lot of others involved in my life. I have a wife, I have 4 kids, I have my business, I have so I four, yeah. So it's been um, a work in progress. There's always cycles. So for instance, I had my first 2 children. They were born from the time the first one was born till the second one was 4 years old. My life, my work-life balance was a disaster. I gained 30 pounds, not exercising, not sleeping well, stressed about business, up to a point where I felt so bad that I decided I had to change something. So I started the cold plunge, exercise, meditation, and it was great for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years. Definitely the best I felt in my life, not only physically but mentally. Um, Doing the routine of reading and journaling in the morning and then exercising, I definitely see a value there. Um, then my wife gets pregnant again during COVID, and it all started again. So I'm pretty much out or almost out of that same stretch. I'm again 30 pounds overweight, not sleeping well, traveling, some habits that are not ideal, drinking and things like that. Nothing major, but everything adds up. And if you add the stresses and the time constraints in life, took me to a point where I was not feeling well at all. I had a couple of scares, took me to the hospital. Um, thank God it was nothing major, but the doctor did ask me to slow down for a little bit until they found out what was wrong. Was that I mean a physical element topped up by anxiety and stress and pretty much all the health um,
Hmm.
like yeah emotional issues. So it's tough. I'm trying to get back on track in terms of my routines. Definitely, there's uh, the more I do it, the more relief I feel, or the better I feel in terms of my clarity, my health. But it's always been, and it is at the moment hard for me to say no to other things, to focus on me. I feel guilty. I feel that I'm leaving either less time for the business, for my family, for my kids, for friends, whatever it is.
Hmm.
So it's a struggle. I don't know how you guys do it, but
Well, even before we go there, the like Colby mentioned, you hear it all the time, all the stuff you should do, and I get influencers and business owners and LinkedIn articles and reels out the wazoo about like do this, do that, which is all fine and dandy, but more people probably should be sharing these real examples. Like I've told you this, Colby, but like when my first business closed, I was in the hospital. That's why, because I could no longer force it to work through heroic effort. These things, but like I'm open to talking about that, but I don't bring it up all the time. It's got to become a little bit more commonplace. Like, yeah, that's why I believe in the peer group, or at least having people you can talk to, because like it's yeah, I can see the photos of me at that time. I can tell you that I wasn't healthy.
of course.
Like there's evidence-based
Right.
criteria.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think finding the thing that works for you, like the reason I said earlier that some of it feels a little nauseating when you see all these influencers, like, there's there's stuff going on in the background there that we don't know, and everyone has their stuff. But I mean, like finding something fun to do, like I've been fully engaged in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a while now, and like I stopped kind of going to the gym because I'm enjoying that so much, and I get camaraderie around that, and it completely shuts my brain off, and it's great. Um, and I did I didn't take a hot shower for 6 months. I was like, it was only cold showers, and our water gets real cold over here.
Right.
I've taken cold showers in
Not a
Costa.
Mexican cold shower. It's a
Yeah,
Canadian cold shower.
yeah, I've taken
Yep.
cold
Yep.
showers in Mexico and Costa Rica and different in South Africa, and it's lukewarm. And
Uh-huh.
so over here, it's quite a dedication. But it's like, that was like a phase that I was going through. I was testing something. I'm always kind of playing around with different health hacks and that type of thing. But like finding something that you can do long term, and it's okay. Like you don't have to be the 4 a.m. grind, uh, running, however many miles per week and stuff like that. I find it's very difficult to always feel like it's never enough, that you're never doing enough, and finding peace in what you enjoy doing, and I think it's important. It's a mature thing that starts to happen if you can kind of shut some of that stuff off and be like, no, this is for me, no, not for all these other people that think I should be doing things a certain way.
And it happens to me. Like ideally, I would go to the gym for 2 hours and do like a full routine, but I don't have enough time. But then there's an internal debate where I say, all right, if I don't go there for 2 hours, why go? Let's just skip it. Even if 20 hours of treadmill are an improvement. And that part for me has been a challenge, waking up in the morning and doing even a little bit. That's not ideal and not what I would um, prefer, but it's some improvement. And I think we're very tough on ourselves. And the comparison out in the world where we select or pick the lifestyle of a person, the
Yeah.
traveling style of one, and like we just want the best of every world, and it's not realistic. And even for us, who are I think more mature than a teenager or a younger person, it's difficult to find happiness or at least um, be comfortable with what you're doing or what you have.
The I embarrassing confession. I have because it's easy. Like your example of 2 hours, I can't make the whole 2 hours, so I'll skip it. My excuse lately that has been very effective at keeping me from doing things that I know I should do is putting on socks. Like
Okay.
I don't have to leave the property. I can go for walks, and I just don't have to wear socks most of my days. And
Hey,
so
Williams,
I
that's
have
what-
to put socks on when I go, like, and especially in the summer. Like I'll just go to the park without socks on. And anyway, so like the treadmill's right outside my office. But that means socks and sneakers. It's like I haven't worn socks this week.
Right.
Different in winter. It's just like
That is the first time I've ever heard that. That is really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It's happened a few times. And I'm like, is really the only reason I'm not on that treadmill or I'm not going out to do that thing is like I don't really want to put socks on or shoes for that matter.
Right. Yeah, and
I'm looking for excuses at this point, and I can
Our
realize it.
our
well,
mind is very good at making excuses and believing them, of course.
Rationalization superpowers.
Right.
like Constantino, you've like we're all fans of Tim Ferriss. You've
No
gone
doubt.
down that route. Like I was doing
Everything.
a really excellent routine that is very hard to make excuses for is the 150 kettlebell swings
Uh-huh.
consecutively, and you're done in 3 minutes, and you
Uh-huh.
are toast in three
Yeah.
minutes. And with a 50-pound kettlebell, 150 swings without dropping it,
Hmm.
and it's like there's so many things that we could be doing that takes no time and
Yep.
give you a clearer head. But it's just it's yeah, it's funny the things that we'll tell ourselves. Yeah.
I have the kettlebell, I have the gym in my house, and I still don't use it. I
Yeah.
mean, I
So
used it at some point. I think Tim Ferriss's approach to doing like the high impact, least amount of time things is great. I mean, no wonder he's where he is, but it's still like socks is a good enough excuse. I'll make something even like sillier if I need to.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
uh, I I wouldn't mind shifting topics a little bit. Are you get any?
No, no, go for it.
One of the questions I was hoping, or the itches I was hoping to scratch, is I got a chance. Like we live in different countries. We have teams in different cultures. I'm a really, really big fan of understanding culture and how teams work and building stronger teams. And you gave the privilege of me facilitating our onboarding session into our culture to your greater team. And since then, I've wanted to have a conversation around what from your because you've been working with us, you've been working with clients, you've lived and worked in the States. What are some of the big cultural differences? I'm trying to remember. Like Rodrigo even mentioned there was a word that we use all the time, and he's like, we don't have a word for that. It might have
Oh,
been accountability or something.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
the way we use that as a term. He's like, we don't actually have that. Like I have to work to translate the way you mean that. So it's not
Yeah.
just effectively micromanage, like the
I
healthy side of
think,
accountability.
yeah, I think the closest word translated for accountability is responsibility, which kind of mean the same thing, but not
Yeah.
that much. But
So
I
just
mean,
the big
there's
cultural differences. I just love to understand because I love understanding how different cultures and teams work. And uh, I also
so
don't know if maybe it didn't feedback. Did it resonate? Was it similar to what we do for our team? Did it resonate with your team?
it does. Um, I mean, I think culturally there are some major differences. But then there's also like we're close enough to the States and to the American or the North American culture where even though we don't live by it, a lot of people are aware of it. So um, more culturally in terms of music, TV, taste,
Mm.
I think that the US and the Canadian, I mean the North American culture overall seems very familiar to us, at least in the part of the country where we live. Um, but even then, there's in terms of the work and the business culture, I would summarize it in a way where I think we're 15 years behind.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm
like
gonna need double clicked on that one.
like I don't know if you go back to 2009 or 2005 where the I mean not the internet but like the systems and online shopping and even remote work was not a thing. That's
Mm.
where a lot of the business and the work culture in Mexico is
Hmm.
overall. Um, but at the same time, I think there's a very heavy work culture and that accountability and responsibility that leads our team and I mean the Mexican workers overall to be very committed to work, very flexible in terms of being open to solve or to go that extra mile
Hmm.
to achieve a goal or to have a happy customer, and they're very eager to learn. Um,
Hmm.
so I think probably we can reflect it to tourism. Like if you go to I don't know Cancun or Cabo, I think the service culture there is something that foreigners recognize and like, and that kind of
Hmm.
translates to the business and the work culture in Mexico.
Hmm.
Um, but that comes obviously with challenges. The language is a challenge. Even, I mean, I went to school in the States. I half of the year or 3 months out of the year I'm there, and still it's there's an accent. There's references that I might not understand, and if you go wider, well, it just
Hmm.
increases. So Um, in terms of the our business specifically, I think it's a good mix because we try to we don't try to mimic or to pretend that we belong. We're very straightforward with our setup and what we offer. And if there's value for our clients overall, then great. If not, and I mean, I think that the world has just become very like just one place. We have
Yeah.
competitors from Asia and South America and Europe all over the place. So I feel that we have that great mix of being close enough but not being a part of, with the service component on top.
Well, I wrote down you said the word nearshoring earlier. I don't think I had actually used that term before.
That's the most used term in Mexico right now.
Interesting. It's funny because we just recorded a conversation about outsourcing, so it's just going to be offshoring versus.
Hmm.
So that's kind of a funny tie. Um, what you just said about your culture and the like, there's a bit of a pleaser and work ethic and get stuff done and overcome obstacles. It was true, and we've talked about this, and it's not super sensitive, but one of the early, because we've learned a lot working with each other. It's been over a year and a half or more now. And one of the earlier ones is that my role was effectively telling the client, yes, we'll figure it out, and I needed your team to tell me no. And so we had to have a couple honest conversations around, like, in this meeting, I know that we were the one paying your bill, so technically I see that we're a client, but we have to shift this mindset. Because you accommodating me means we're doing things that maybe don't necessarily need to be done. So you need to be bad cops. We need to have that. So when I believe that the reason why we did the onboarding and culture, which a lot of the core of our onboarding and facilitation we do is around Pat Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, and having enough trust that you can have healthy conflicts and have peer to peer conflict.
Hmm.
And so I did. I was like, I need to be able to argue with your people and them not fold. I think that was the polite way I put it to you and Antonio. I was like, I want them to
Yeah.
argue with me. Can we fix that? I don't think we ever got that. I think Rodrigo tries, but I am an assertive
It's
speaker. I think is my problem.
right. I think it's cultural. It's
Mm.
cultural. Like, I don't want to say it, but there's a sense. Um, I'm going to say it for myself, not for the rest of Mexico. I don't want to hurt anyone with my word.
You'll be canceled.
There's a I feel a sense of inferiority with Americans and Canadians, not personally, but
Hmm.
culturally, right? And I think you can see that in different places, in politics, in sports. I mean, it's not a topic that I want to go down um, and explore, but it's it's difficult to bypass it,
Hmm.
and I think it's also an age issue. I think we in Mexico we're having that transition where probably 45 to 50-year olds are very um, old school, if I may. And for instance, my my dad, my uncles, or even younger people, they don't use a computer. They use a cell phone, but that's it. They don't believe in technology. They like to do things in pen and
Hmm.
paper, and that's great. It worked for them. That's fine. I think we are in that middle transition where it's half and half. I'm more of an early adopter, and I love trying out new things. But we're in that middle
Hmm.
group. But then younger guys, which our average age in team is probably 24, 25-year olds. So they see a
That sounds
foreigner.
exhausting.
It is, it is, it is. It's a whole challenge because millennials and centennials, there's different challenges there with how they work, what they value, and it's been a whole topic of discussion and testing out the best route to go. But So it's that mix of trying to be very service oriented, and then that kind of not inferiority, but kind of respect, if that's a better word for
Hmm.
that. And then you at a client level, it's a three components where it's hard to say, you know what, Levi or any other client, you're wrong. That's not the best way to go. It's just tough, and
Yeah,
that's something we try and train on.
it's definitely a bit of an odd ask, like it, because we think of you guys as partners, and like, and to shift the mentality from client to partner, where there is going to be that kind of healthy conflict back and forth of like, well, we could do this and this. It's like it. I could totally understand that it's a brain shift, especially if you speak so confidently, like like Levi does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when I have no idea what I'm doing, I now introduce as like I actually don't know what we're doing. This isn't me saying what we should do. It just sounds
Yeah,
this way.
we're just throwing some stuff on the wall, and then like
Yeah.
we're more of the figure it out people, and like owning up to our mistakes and course correcting is something that we do all the time. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
because like I had a, because these kind of digital transformations that we've kind of thrown out that term, but I had a guy tell me one time, we were struggling with something, and he said to me, he was like, "Can you name a digital transformation that has ever gone smoothly, ever?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess I guess that's probably true." He's like, "Name one large company that implemented an ERP system and it went well." And it's like, okay, well, if I can just put to rest that this is going to be difficult, we are going to shift things halfway through the project, most likely. It's like, it front loading that conversation in the beginning has become more important to us,
Yeah.
uh, I suppose.
Yeah. We're
Yeah,
here for long-term results, not that system going in place, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Which plays havoc with the scope, as we all know.
yeah.
Uh,
Right.
your thoughts on the culture just cut because I get because I speak a lot and I speak assertively and I'm loud. I think out loud. Like I know all these things. But sometimes it still gets set in my pants around like sits me down and I got to think about it. Like we had somebody the other day and it was an Asian culture and somebody warned me that if when they say something, if you immediately respond, if you don't allow a pocket of silence, it indicates disrespect. And the more respect you have for them, the longer the period of silence should be.
Wow.
I want to say it's Japanese, but I actually don't remember. I have to look that up. But like it's ingrained in the culture and it's just part of it. And I was like, oh, I am disrespecting everybody. I am like nanoseconds of silence. I am like, if I hear a silence go off for 2 minutes, I'll find a way to kill it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just an interesting, just like that sets you back. I was like, oh, that's a course correct. I think I have in control, but it's hard shift.
yeah.
Yeah.
Doing international business is you find cultures that come off as cold, and that's not the case.
I love the German culture when I lived there. Loved it. It's so
Yeah,
direct.
well, just today I was on with India, Germany, and now you're in Mexico right now, right?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, it's just our lives have changed.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, there's so many. Canadians have the what is it? The stereotype of being overly polite,
Well, like,
uh, and that's been something that's been kind of criticized in the media lately, where it's just like we're just brushing everything under the rug and hoping nothing happens.
do you agree with that stereotype? Like,
Yes,
do you
I
see
do.
it?
I do.
Yeah.
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 I think, but it's not a positive thing. A lot of people talk about it as being so polite and friendly or weak or all those things. But where it becomes into, like I say it to a lot of people, like I coach newcomers to Canada on their LinkedIn profiles. It's just something I personally do. And they come in and I forgot where I was going with that. I had a good topic.
It was like the Canadians being overly
And the
polite.
Oh,
stereotype.
the language and everybody's very sensitive talking to people from different colors of skin and cultures and accents and so I've become kind of a person that I'm comfortable at least acknowledging the things that people are thinking and like lean into the conversation around like here's the questions that they're asking in their heads that they'll never ask you on paper. Just feed them what they want to know, like accents, like just because most Canadians I know subconsciously, and I'm this is from this is not a study, and I'd love for somebody to get this far into the podcast to argue with me. I would love that, but they would rather avoid a conversation that might be awkward because that would be impolite than they would have the conversation. And that's why when I talk to people from other cultures, especially where community is really strong, they come to Canada and everybody's super friendly, but nobody ever invites you over. Nobody ever builds a real friendship. Nobody ever has a. So we're both simultaneously polite, but very off-putting and cliquish and closed loop. And a lot of people I know they're doing is like, oh, I'm not going to know how to pronounce their name, and so I don't want to engage. Or I'm going to ask a weird question, or I don't know where they're from, or I'm going to get, and that's enough because I might put my foot in my mouth. And then add it to a Zoom call, it's even worse because now they don't want to even like interrupt somebody. um, yeah,
I've seen
too
it.
polite.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah,
I think it's I agree. Well, I think there's politeness in our culture, but in a different way. Probably not so much in conversation or in verbalizing it, but if you come live in Mexico for 3 months, you'll have someone invite you over on Thursday out for drinks, on Saturday to their family lunch or dinner, whatever it is. I think that's I mean, it happened to me even as I've moved to a different city in Mexico. But same day I got there, I had a group of friends invite me out. I had a soccer team to play every week. So
yeah,
it's the different or the other end of
yeah.
what you were mentioning.
Where I grew up, there's still people who moved there when I was 10, who are still the new people
Wow.
because everybody else is six generations. It's also population density, right? Like our capital city's got 100,000 people.
Mhm.
I had 8,000 people in the place I grew up. Like it's just hard to. It's easier to isolate when you have so much space.
Right.
And like it only gets for like my fiance and I lived in South Africa for 3 years, and over there, like you add in the dynamic of safety. Like making new friends when there's safety concerns too, right? Like everyone's in gated communities and like there's not a lot of bumping spaces. If you randomly start talking to somebody, they might be like, "Whoa, what's this person want from me?" Um, yeah, it's just, and then after the age of 30 to to make new connections is always difficult.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, cultural
Uh,
differences. Yeah.
I feel like I've crossed the gamut of some of the conversation topics I wanted to do. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about or bring, Constantino?
Or
I
questions for
do.
us? Yeah.
You
I do.
do.
I want to pick your brain.
Okay.
Um, so we've talked about all these different aspects, business,
Mhm.
health, um, relationships. As of now, with what you know and what you've experienced, what what does success or the end goal look like for you? Let's say in 20 years. And I don't want to put it in years so much because I think our lifetime will extend with lots of things. But if you look back in let's say 20 years or 30 years, what combination of all these topics that we've talked about, what do you consider um, success?
Okay, see you later. Uh,
I so I go through and I facilitate, but I've also gone through a kind of a recurring exercise around like writing your eulogy and talking to your 90-year-old self and what do you want, like life planning.
Hmm?
So I kind of have the where I'm at, and saying them is aspirational because I'm like if I. So I'm gonna. By the way, I'm explaining this, giving you time to think because you're gonna do this first, Colby. Just so you know, um, the where I get to is I it's a quick story. I got some really hard advice once, where they started off by saying, "What do you value?" And they had a whole workshop on what do you personally value, not your company. Maybe your personal company is an extension of you, but what are your core values? There was a really managed workshop, and we got through, and everybody had like, these are the five, and there was things to help you select. And I got there, and they got really specific, and they pointed at them as like, are you sure you value that? Because other stuff you wrote isn't representing your values. So I had health as a value. I had no efforts or goals related to health, and I wasn't in good shape, and I was probably hungover.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, you don't actually value it. Like, that's, you're telling yourself that you can't actually value something without, it was
Acting
probably
on it.
harsher delivery than it needed to be, but it sent it home. It's like, well, I don't actually value that. It's show, don't tell, and real values are shown, not told.
Hmm.
And so that's core. So anyway, I would love to give a response, but I want you to go first, Colby.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going through this level of clarity as we speak. This has been the past a couple of months. I've always been in this like continuous improvement mentality, but without a lot of intentionality. And now I'm trying to narrow that scope a little bit. To my goal is to know what I'm saying no to, and why. So I'm still sorting out what my major priorities are and where I want to get to. I know for a fact that I want to always chase excitement. So that has brought some clarity to the decisions I'm going to make. What excites me? What, not necessarily what makes me happy, but what gets me excited? What will I forget to eat for? And I'm still answering these questions. Like, this is work that I'm literally was doing on the whiteboard last week with my fiance and doing it together. So I met with this great guy. His name's Warren Rustand. He speaks at a lot of EO events and mentors a lot of people. He's basically James Bond. He was the right hand man to President Gerald Ford. He was in the NBA. He worked at the CIA at some stage, I think, as well. And he's just, he's got a $2.1 billion company, like, unbelievable guy. He's 83, travels the world, speaks all over the place. And he said to me, this was like 2 weeks ago. He said to me, the number one thing you can do right now is make sure that you and your partner are aligned. My fiance, like, start there and start to build this together, what your priorities are, and do it as a unit. And so this is what we're doing right now. We're making decisions that we otherwise wouldn't have made because of alignment. And so exactly where I see myself in 20 years, I can see bits and pieces of it, but I don't have the level of clarity to to say exactly what it is like at this moment. But I've got some principles and some things that I'm doing on a regular basis, and being okay with it changing. Like Levi, when you said health, some of the things that I want to write down are probably things that I shouldn't focus on, because, like, I think other people's influence is creeping into my life often. And every time you open your phone up, there's something creeping into your life. Well, maybe I should have that because it's going to
Well, they
impress.
call them influencers for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I've made so many decisions as like I'm a thoroughbred people pleaser, and I think I'm getting a bit more comfortable in my own skin to be making my decisions, to saying no to those things that I shouldn't be focused on. And that's a big enough leap for me lately that I know I've got a bit more confidence that I'm going to find that path, that place that I want to end up. So that's probably how I'll answer that right now. Is like, I'm I can give you the prioritization exercise that
Show
Warren.
notes.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to send it to you.
Yeah.
Like, it was an interesting because he's responsible for he wrote the scheduling process for all presidents that they still follow. He said except for Trump, he doesn't follow it, but because they would on average get 150 requests for their time per day. So they had to figure out, what's the big picture. And so he kind of helps entrepreneurs with that same process. And I've heard lots of different methodologies of how to get there, but this one really did click with me. Yeah, that's probably how I'd answer that.
I wrote down that we had "Are you a gun dealer or arms dealer?" Now it's like "Confessions of a Thoroughbred People Pleaser."
Yeah.
Tagline potential for the.
Did that, I know it was a roundabout way, but any thoughts on that?
I love your answer. I was asking more for the thought process and the how you're tackling it or how you want to tackle it more than the answer. I like you mentioned that answer will change if you do that exercise tomorrow, if the world change, if anything happens. It's it's more of the thought process and the struggle that I wanted to learn because I love the fact that you mentioned being aligned with your partner because it's something I've struggled to do. Um, I try to, but my wife doesn't really believe in those exercises. So I'm I'm gonna give it another go. But
I'll be
thanks for
more
sharing
direct.
it.
My wife would rather put a knife in her eye than go through one
Yeah,
of those exercises with me at this
yeah.
point.
So, so I'll just before you answer, Levi. So my fiance has been in school for 13 years,
Yeah.
becoming a vet, right? So, and meanwhile, I'm dabbling in all these kind of entrepreneurial self-improvement mindset things, and like I go and I come home from one of these events I go to, and I just blurt it all out with zero sensitivity to where she's at that moment, and that I've learned to choose my words a little bit better and ask more questions and and
Yeah.
now it's like now that she's graduated and like she's a vet, so she's interested in, we're going to acquire clinics and all that type of stuff. It's like now she's bringing up stuff where she'll go work in a clinic and she sees all these improvement things that she can do, and I've gotten more buy-in, but it was all timing. it was
Hmm.
it, it wasn't something that you could ever force on somebody, nor should anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's becoming this really collaborative conversation where we're like, we're feeling more aligned than ever, and that it's just timing.
I feel like I need to clarify just so my wife doesn't get this in out of context. But she's a strategic director. We've become more aligned in talking about these things. She doesn't like, and I know a lot of people who don't. She doesn't really want to be planning that far ahead. She
Hmm.
doesn't really want to do the visioning. So it. I'll stab at my answer. Actually, I had one more comment on the wife spouse side there because it was related, I think, to what you were saying, Constantino. Is I get these moments in time where somebody says something to me that I do completely blindsided, and I mentioned earlier, it just sits me down in my chair. And one of them was like I've been doing, since 2008 in business entrepreneurship, and joined my first peer group and started going to events in 2011, and I moderated and coaching and leading other peer groups from 2014 on, and uh, about 2018, it was before COVID, 18 or 19. um, my wife said something along the lines, very close to this, is your constant need for ongoing improvement and trying new things communicates to me that you're not happy with today.
Hmm.
And it's like in my head, they were completely disconnected. They were like me
Right.
trying new things and excited and like reading the books, and I did the slow carb and I tried all the stuff from Tim Ferriss's book and I tried this, and I'm always excited about what's next. And she said, just so you know, all that communicates to me is that you're not happy with today and what your status is now. That is inadequate. I was like, so the language changed. That forced the like that's not what I mean. So obviously it's a communications problem. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was just that sat me back. It's like, all right, I'm obviously, you know, need to get that through. Um, I do want to answer this because I love these conversations. I'm glad you prompted it. Where do I want to be in 20 years, or how do I think about it? First of all, I don't want to know. The idea of having a defined thing, I feel, would be very limiting. Which I talk to a lot of people who are very goal oriented, and I enjoy that. I enjoy a good debate, by the way, in case you didn't know. And I've worked really hard at this, and they sound a little wordsmith because I've been playing with them for a few years now, and they're kind of principle based, and they're filters that I feel like help me make decisions. Um, the context for the first one is that my first business had a lot of opportunity. I won a lot of awards. It was 8 years, 2 people to 40 people. And, the year I closed, I had news, print, and articles, and videos, and documentaries written about us. Um, but I was never about the money. I'm still, the paycheck or the big exit is just not in my DNA. It was like I'm solving a problem, or I'm making an impact, or I'm doing something nobody else can do. Those were the drivers. Very socially oriented business. It was a local food connection, farmers and people, and food security. And so I, ever since then, and one of the reasons why I wanted a partnership with, less so you, Colby, but Aaron is very money oriented. Not that he's like a greedy guy, but he's just always aware, and that's a driver for him. And he once told me that that's his scorecard, because he's competitive with himself. He's like, that's the scorecard that I can measure, and I need that in my life, because my principle is, I want to be in the future in a place where money is a tool and not a constraint. And I've never been able to think of money as something I can use as a tool to do a thing. It's always been the limitation, barrier, or constraint, or risk. And I don't know what that is. I think about that often, or like, what is that? But that's a big driver. It's one of two. And the other one that I've had, and I've got a tattoo of it for part of it on my leg. I want to be able to say I've lived a life of no regrets. No regrets has been a common element. And the clarification on that is, I'm equally worried about regretting things not done as
Right.
things done. And so I want to be able to do the stuff that I want to do. So yeah, live a life no regrets, things done or things undone, and to have the money so that it's a tool, not a constraint. Are the two deciding
Great.
factors.
That's great. I appreciate it.
And
They're not being followed very well.
well,
By the way, money is still a constraint.
the thought that I have around that the fact that we're even having this conversation, there's going to be 90+%. This is an assumption, 90% ish, somewhere around there, of people will never think about things this way. And yeah, I guess the fact that we've even gotten to this point where we've had people in our lives that kind of ask us these big questions, or push us, or just make us think differently. Every time I go away on one of these trips, I come back going, huh. Uh, and seeing different cultures and seeing how other people do things, and like travel's a big driver for me, and Levi too. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, just the met. What I was gonna say, I just lost my train of thought. There was, I think it was like early days when I first got into like any sort of improvement stuff, listening to Tony Robbins, and that was kind of my first exposure to
He's
any.
an OG.
Yeah, I still go back. I found I took a big break, and I kind of went back to it not that long ago. And it's still great. But he said something that really, really stuck with me to kind of take it easier on myself. Was
Be kind to yourself.
measuring your life in 10 years rather than like looking back on the past year. And it's like, if I look 10 years ago versus now, this is like unbelievable how things have changed in a great way. And so now I'm just trying to think of like everything in those like 10-year blocks, and I find it's just like a little bit less pressure. But thanks, Tony.
All right, what's your where do you want to be in 20 years? You can't ask the question without giving an answer.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. I I think I combine elements of both of your answers. Um,
Cheater.
No, I mean, and it's uh, very. I want a freedom in terms of time and money,
Mm,
um, and not for um, the sake of it, but for what it brings. I think that I value, and I'm just really using the words Colby used right now, but excitement. Um,
mm,
and it can be exciting as having a full day of just sitting down and reading in a coffee shop, which I haven't been able to do in a while, or travel, or I mean, the excitement can be in very different forms and elements. Um, I I do want a very close connection with few people, and
mm,
that aligns with saying no to a lot of things. I've never been someone that has that many friends, but I'm very close with a few people, and it's that people that I want to be very intentional and conscious on who those people are.
mm,
And as of now, it's my wife, my kids. It's a closed or a small circle, and I want to be. That's more of a long term, but I want to be remembered as someone that's kind. Very, I think
mm.
that's the best word for it. Always being um, thoughtful and open to helping others. So I think there's no greater um,
Mm.
legacy than people thinking of you, of being kind with what you have, whether that's time, attention, help, maybe not even money because that kind of deviates the attention, but someone that's
Time
kind.
became generous at that point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So those are my three working topics. I mean, health is part of all of this, and like I've been reminded of that over the last couple of months. But if I want to live um, long enough and free enough to do all these things, that's what I'm trying to focus on, just to
Hmm.
make it and have the the freedom and the strength to do all of these things.
Yeah,
God, I feel like we've come to a really good tie to bow situation.
I do too. Yeah, I mean, I could probably go for another 4 hours, but it's going to be.
Yeah, we could open up the whole topic of how you're going to run two businesses while having four kids, and why the hell did you have four? Never mind.
Well,
It just happened.
Levi and I both don't have kids, but
I know.
Aaron has kids, and it's been an ongoing topic of like it just never feels like the right time. It's just like, do we not want?
Well,
Like,
we're actually in different cases because you and Kana are having that discussion.
yeah,
Aaron, our partner, has two preteens,
Mhm.
um, and my wife and I made the decision 10 years ago that we're not. And so they're actually three very different headspaces, which is interesting to have in our team.
yeah, yeah, it is.
and and they're all exciting and valid. It's how you kind of manage what you decide on and how you pursue it. Um, for me, it's definitely a challenge. It's like every minute that I'm not in the office working is devoted to them, and I love it. I have no regrets on what I spend my time on and my effort and my money on. But yeah, for I don't know how it happened. Um, we were very good with two, and then somehow we ended up here. But it's great.
Blame it on COVID. You're fine.
How old are your kids?
10, a girl that's 10, a boy that's
Put 'em on the
8.
spot.
Sorry?
So put you on the spot.
Yeah, yeah. Girl that's 11, boy 8, boy 3, and boy 1. So we have like three teens and two babies.
Whoa, wow, respect.
I'm really good, and one of my private pleasures is giving unsolicited bad parental advice to parents as a non-parent. I told Rodrigo that because he has a brand new one. I was like, I love to give advice, just completely unsolicited and warranted at all. Like it's so much fun, and
Yeah,
I know it's appreciated.
I did that. I did that the other day. A guy just had a baby, and we were all out at a golf simulator and having a few drinks, and we were all giving advice to him. And the only thing I could add is because I have a dog, and I was like, well, if the dog throws up at nighttime, you just leave it till morning. And that was the only thing I had.
And on that note,
Yeah.
anything anyone else wants to say before we break it down?
That was lovely.
I really enjoyed that conversation. I think
Me
we
too.
covered some really great topics.
Yeah.
Same.
I really don't care if anybody listens to this, but I'm glad if anybody's listening, they did at this point.
Yeah. 100%. And there's lots more conversations we can have, and I'm sure there's like other specific topics we could jump into for a few more of these. If there's a lot of alignment here, and we should be doing more together. And
Rodrigo and I have been trying to push you two busy butterfly folks into a room together, because you're both more involved in the business development. We're both in the weeds. It's like, you guys just need to spend more time together.
Yeah. I have an idea, but I'll take that offline. I have an idea.
The
All
answer
right.
is yes, regardless of what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my reaction to most things. It's like the answer's yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, what is it?
Well,
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Constantino. That was a lot of fun, and I
Thank you,
hope
guys.
that other people get to listen and get some value from this conversation.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it too.
This episode of Built to Last is brought to you by Ironhouse Pro, your behind-the-scenes partner in building organizations designed to thrive. We specialize in solving the big challenges, the small annoyances, and everything in between. So while you're out there dreaming big, we're here making sure your systems, processes, and people are ready for tomorrow. Ironhouse Pro, driven to create lasting organizations. Learn more at ironhousepro.com.